whatever. But then when he's got a 5 to 6 yard runway to the quarterback, he doesn't have that burst to convert those wins into pressures and sacks.
Hey, welcome into the Hot Read podcast for Friday, May the 3rd. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, Director of Published Content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I am joined, as always, by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Runke. JT, how are you?
I'm good.
And we are also joined by a longtime friend of the show, James Foster of AtoZ Film Room, No Flags Film on Twitter. James, how are you, my friend?
JT stole my line. I'm also good.
Okay. It's good to hear that you are both good.
We're great. I'll go with great. There we go.
Okay.
So we can both. Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Well, James, I know you. This is your first week off since at least the beginning of draft season. You've been watching birds on the back porch and enjoying the simpler things in life. So good for you.
Yeah, man. I haven't opened up an all-22 MP4 file in like 2 or 3 days. Feels great.
Are you somebody that doesn't know what to do with themselves as soon as the train comes to a stop, or are you happy to just put all of that behind you for a little bit?
Well, it's like my job is a lot of hours, but it's also something that I enjoy doing. Like it's what I was doing kind of as my hobby before I started as my job. So
right.
Like on a day-to-day basis, yes, I'm always like just eager to get into it, but after months of doing it, it is nice to like catch up on some Netflix series and like see friends and stuff like that. So
sure.
And for a week or so, I don't mind it.
Stoney's asking you if you have a scouting report on the tufted tilt mouse. I know you've been brushing up on nature. Have you gotten to that portion of the handbook yet?
No, I'm still at the point where I'm just calling them like gray birds and like kind of badly imitating their sound. I know the one in the morning that's like
yeah. The long drawn out slight modulations. I know. I'm also familiar with the noise. Do you know what the name of that bird is, or we just know the noise?
Oh, I looked it up. It's like the morning something.
Wow, that is fantastic insight. We're not going to have you back on for our bird week later this summer because simply we need better expertise than that. But we'll have you on to do a little draft recap. We dragged you out of your week off for just a little bit on today's show. We're going to go over some things that we haven't talked about with you on the show since I think in person at the Senior Bowl in January. So it's been a while. And obviously we know what the Titans have done. We know what other teams in the AFC South have done. So we're going to focus on the picks the Titans made and get your perspective on those. We'll have a little bit of debate there. Get some highlights and lowlights from around the AFC South as well. But I want to start with today's, well, not really news, but more of the rumor of the day. Tyler Boyd potentially being the newest Tennessee Titan in short order. Before we get to those three things, if you're with us live today, we appreciate you being here. Do us a couple of favors. If you're watching on Twitter or on Facebook, leave those places. Go on over to YouTube. Look up Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. Find this live stream, and in the comment section there is where you can be a part of today's conversation. We would love to have any questions or comments you have. And anything you want to ask James, now is the time. So throw those in the comments over there. While you're there on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit like, all those things you can help us with the algorithm, those techie things, very helpful to us. If you can just hit those two buttons and make sure you're following on Twitter and social media and all those things. Just make sure you're doing all the things for us so that we can continue to provide entertainment and insight for you guys. James, let's start with Tyler Boyd, who is in Nashville apparently right now. Not shocking at all that the Titans are barking up this tree, considering the lengthy history that he has with the Bengals organization and therefore with Brian Callahan, veteran receiver, 29 years old, played all like 8 or 9 of his seasons he's played so far in the NFL with the Bengals, is now on the open market. Certainly on the older side, on the downside of his career, but put up 600 yards and change last year for the Bengals without a lot of Joe Burrow out there. The Titans are looking for a consistent element in the slot for their receiving game, something that they have not had for a couple of seasons now, really since like Adam Humphries. What would we make of him becoming a Tennessee Titan, besides the Titans just putting together the oldest wide receiver room in the league?
Yeah, I think it's a solid move that makes sense. I mean, he's a good route runner. I think that he would probably Not probably. I think definitely be the clear starter as the slot receiver. Kyle Phillips has some talent, but has just not really shown the ability to get on the field consistently and then stay on the field once he carves out a role.
Right.
I don't see Treylon Burks as really having a skill set that fits in the slot, for most offenses. And I think that even though Tyler Boyd is definitely on the downswing of his career, I think his yards per route run, when I was looking at it, was like the past year was the lowest since his second year in the NFL, I believe, which was like 2017 or 2018. So kind of, makes sense with Joe Burrow out, but I don't think that it's really going to like uplift their offense or their receiving room, but definitely a steady option to have in the slot.
Yeah, they've been talking Titans brass all offseason long about how they're looking for that steady element in the slot. I'd imagine that's a pretty important element of the offense that Brian Callahan's wanting to implement. And so not shocked that, and there's been a lot of smoke, like Rand Carthon on the radio this morning saying that a vacation he had planned, he's having to push back this week because of other things that have come up. According to his Instagram, Tyler Boyd is in the city, and there's been reports that he's potentially signing with the Titans. So like, I'm at the point where I think that they're probably going to get a deal done. I don't know how much money I would want to spend on him or what kind of deal I would want to put forth, but it will be funny. And you'll hear a lot about how, wow, the Titans have a nursing home of a wide receiver room. The average age of their starters being north of 30 years old. People get so upset about that on social media. Like, just because they're old does not mean they're bad. I think if you watch DeAndre Hopkins last year or Calvin Ridley or Tyler Boyd last year, those three guys put up like 2,700 yards combined, and they're all pretty old by NFL standards. I think it'd be a good, I don't know, it's the kind of thing you want to surround your rookie quarterback or your young second year quarterback with to see what he has, put him in a cushy situation. And while it's not going to be a long-term fix, those three guys won't be here for too long. If it becomes those three guys, it's a good place to start with Will Levis, I think.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you would rather young, good receivers, but when you don't draft well, old, good receivers are kind of your only option. So
that's your second best bet. Absolutely. So let's get to drafting, and let's get to what the Titans did in this draft class. Actually, before we get to the Titans in particular, I know that you were doing your draft streams, and the draft is your Super Bowl every year. Besides Michael Penix, which maybe you saw that coming. I doubt you did. Was there anything in particular that really shocked you, what a team did or did not do? Or for the most part, was it pretty smooth sailing after the 8th pick?
Yeah, going down the board, I think, the biggest shocks were obviously Michael Penix. I think also the trade up for Rook Ororo 35 for the Falcons was, I mean, there's not a worse like 1-2 punch to start out the draft, in my opinion. Tavondre
in terms
Sweat,
of value or more in terms of players? Like, were you not a big fan of Rook in general, or just the idea of
I
trading?
mean, Rook was more of like a late third type of player. Definitely not someone that I'm wanting to trade up for with like almost a first round pick. I think Tavondre Sweat at 38 was pretty shocking, which we'll get into. Yeah, as far as the top picks, I think those are probably the three that stand out to me as being the furthest from how I see it.
Any draft haul that you just loved?
Oh, yeah. Love the Chargers draft. Love the 49ers draft. They get my guy. Like, they were just taking my guys, Renardo Green, Dominic Pooney, Malik Mustafa. So love the Chargers. Love the 49ers.
You a Garendo guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a really good fit for what they do, especially. And
unfortunately, he's wearing number 49 now, so he's going to suck. But it was a nice idea while it lasted.
Yeah, I think 49ers, Chargers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then like really the AFC North outside of Cleveland. I thought the Ravens, Bengals, and Steelers all had really good drafts.
And poor Cleveland, they didn't have a chance to have a great draft because they don't have any picks. I wonder where those went. Okay, well, let's get to the Titans, and let's start with, we'll get to Sweat in a minute. Let's start with Latham in the first, sticking at 7. We've talked a ton about it on the show already. People know our opinions on this, and if they don't, they can go back the last couple episodes. What did you make of that? I know that you and I were one of the few in Jim Wyatt's article to predict the Titans would be picking JC Latham in the first round. So you saw it coming at least a little bit. What did you make of the value there? And maybe give us a refresher on what you made of JC Latham as a prospect in general.
Yeah. So on that prediction, like I'll tell a quick story that kind of draws a parallel to that for my thought process. So like when I was in elementary school, we had this Halloween party, and they had like a guess the number of gumballs in the jar type of thing.
Right.
And I look at the list and I see this girl, her name's Carolyn, and I'm like, she seems like the type of person who would win this sort of contest. So I just wrote down the number that she put, and then we won, and then I won the rock, paper, scissors thing to win the entire jar. That's kind of
not even splitting.
That's a similar thought process that I went through with JC Latham, where it's like Joe Alt to the Titans just seems like too good of a thing to happen to the Titans. It seems like just too clean, like everybody's been lining it up. Yep. JC Latham seems a lot more the Titans speed. So I'll guess that happens. So kind of a similar sort of deal there. But you know, I view JC Latham as like a top 10 player, I think right underneath what I would call a blue chip prospect.
Right. Purple chip guy. Sure.
If we're grading the actual outcome of the scenario, like it wouldn't get a very high grade because you would ideally want Joe Alt or Malik Neighbors to fall to the Titans. But with what they had, the options that they had to him, it was basically like you either take JC Latham, Olu Fashanu, or Roma Dunze. I think that Latham is comfortably a better prospect than Fashanu, and I much prefer the strategy if you need tackle and wide receiver of going tackle in the first round and then getting a receiver later than taking Roma Dunze and then trying to gamble on one of these second round tackles. Now they ended up not really taking a receiver, but just purely as far as the first round, I think
doing like what the Chargers did, right? Ending up with Alt and then McConkey in the second.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I would have done, taking JC Latham. I think just like from an anchor standpoint and just like grip strength, I don't know if I've ever evaluated a stronger offensive lineman. I think pretty clearly the strongest player in this class. And someone that weighs like, 342 pounds at the combine, but he doesn't look, heavy on tape. Nope. It's like a really dense build, and you can tell it's just pure strength. But for all of that power, like what is really most impressive that stands out to me about JC Latham is how much of a technician he is with his hands. He almost never overextends himself or gets off balance. He's really patient, letting the rusher declare his move, does a lot of, crafty hand technique and stuff in pass pro. Didn't really have much of an issue with speed rushers. Like, unless it was, there's a play maybe that stands out where he was just late with the snap count. But as far as actually getting beat one-on-one, I don't know if he got beat around the edge last year at all. He did get beat a couple times inside through the B gap. So that's really my one concern with him is like, he can get enough depth with a speed rush, but he's really leaning his weight upfield. And if he has to redirect inside, I don't know if he's light enough on his feet to do that. So that's probably my one concern with him. But outside of that, man, I love JC Latham as a prospect.
So the way that you saw maybe the tackle class, but just the entirety of the upper crust of this board, when Neighbors did not fall, when Alt did not fall, and the Titans were presented with, it sounds like they were at least convinced it's either take Latham now or miss out on him if we were to trade back. Would you have preferred Latham at 7 or moving down, getting a Olu, or even further back, getting a Fontenot and gathering some capital? What would you have done if you were sitting in the chair?
It depends on the draft capital, obviously, but I think I would probably, if we're saying you can get a 3rd round pick and take Olu Fashanu, I would take that option.
Sure.
I think I'd probably rather Latham than like Fautanu or something.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the Jets. I know, like, there was a video that released from their like draft room, and they were
Joe Douglas. Yep.
Right. They were when the Titans took Latham, you could see that they clearly were like changing their strategy.
Right.
Like he was the player they were going to take. Yeah, I don't think Latham would have been available for much longer. It seems like the NFL was a lot higher on him than a lot of media.
Well, a big reason why a lot of media and fans in particular weren't high on him was because of the mental divisi of right tackles and left tackles in the draft, and the idea that left tackle is significantly more important, and they're, switching positions, especially going right to left, is so difficult, and it's a gamble, and all these things. Can you talk a little bit to the value of the two sides, the two different tackle positions? I have talked about it a ton on the show, and maybe you can offer more intelligent insight than I can as to whether or not one, it's a huge difference in value between a left tackle and a right tackle in the modern NFL, and two, just how difficult that transition is for guys.
So when people talk about, like, is he athletic enough to, like, they have a right tackle and they're like, is he athletic enough to play left tackle?
Right.
It's like, it all just kind of goes completely over my head. I have no idea what people are talking about.
Okay.
Like, I don't understand why you would need to be more athletic to play left tackle in today's NFL. Like,
I think it's because people think the better edge rushers are all on the left, which couldn't be.
Yeah, I mean,
true.
I don't know what kind of athlete do you need to block TJ Watt?
A good one, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't see, as far as like the requirements to play on either side. The only difference is just your muscle memory and like what you're comfortable doing, in terms of body movement. Like, are you comfortable? There are some people that just, it feels natural taking a set on the right side and, like, using their hands that way. And then you try to move them over to the left and they, it just like doesn't work for them.
Taylor Lewan always said that, right? That if he tried to play any other position on the line, he would suck. He was very confident in that.
Yeah, and I think that it comes down to, I think it's a lot easier to move somebody to switch sides when you've got a player coming out of college than like trying to take an 8-year NFL veteran that's done, off season after off season of drilling the exact same thing. And Latham's a player that has played left tackle in high school. I was watching his like interview film breakdown with Brandon Thorne a couple months ago. And Brandon asked him about like why he didn't play left tackle this next year. And he said it was basically just like they had the freshman coming in who they only felt comfortable with on the left side. He was planning to move over to the left, but Saban was like, no, we just need you on the right this year. So I forget the exact words, but it seemed like something that he felt very comfortable, switching sides. It's just like how it ended up to get their best 5 on the field. And the last thing I'll say is the only real value difference between left and right tackle, which I think makes up like 5% maybe, is the blind side and what the quarterback can theoretically react to pressure within their field of vision more quickly. So there's a little bit of difference in value there, but I don't really see any kind of gulf between left and right tackle outside of that.
Well, and since you mentioned it, I was on the phone with Justin Mello last night, and I'll do a little cross promotion here. I can't give away too much because it's not mine to tell, but there is an interesting answer that he got in an interview that is coming out on Broadway Sports Media next week with somebody who was in charge of these things as to why Latham never played left tackle in high school. And he was telling me about it, and it is an interesting answer. So check that out on Broadway Sports Media next week, Justin Mello's newest article. But yeah, man, I I don't see why he can't play left tackle. I'm with you that the athleticism thing continues to stump me. I think it's people just being dense or stuck in the past or some combination thereof. So that's JC Latham. Let's move on to the more interesting conversation that I think we'll have with you, and that's T'Vondre Sweat, a pick that it seems you weren't, from at least a value standpoint, particularly fond of. Let me ask you this first. How much of where you had Sweat on your board had to do with having to, from the outside, make some sort of risk assessment on the off-field stuff? Or do you take any of that into account when you build your board?
Yeah, it was, there were probably, there were 2 players that I dropped their grade based on off-field stuff. That was T'Vondre Sweat and Jermaine Burton.
Right.
Before the off-field, like if he was just a choir boy off the field, it would be, I think I had him 79th on my board. So like it's a reach based off of the, like, just as a football player value perspective, but then also just a risk that I think it's very irresponsible for the Titans to be making. So yeah, it's the way that I think about it is like, if you've got one red flag or just, main thing that's sticking out as a negative for you, it's like you can get past that. But then once you start stacking those up, it's going to tank your grade exponentially. And that's what happened with T'Vondre Sweat.
Sure. So let's approach it from a purely football standpoint, because neither you nor I know exactly what, like we know, we've heard the story from the Titans, them meeting with him right after the DWI, going down, meeting with his family, setting clear expectations, all these fail safes and all the boots on the ground stuff they've done that they've made clear they feel comfortable with it. We kind of have to take them at their word on that. We can't make an evaluation from that standpoint. But clearly you still, if he was just a choir boy off the field, felt that it was a reach to take him where they did. It's something that it's an opinion you had before the Titans ever made that pick. I have disagreed with that opinion ever since before the Titans made that pick. But I do want to give you a chance to lay out your football argument as to why you believe he was a reach at 38, so that our listeners can have a different perspective.
Yeah, I think, the football argument also kind of breaks down into two facets, which is like them as a football player and their ability to stay on the field. So as a football player, I think that really good run defender. He, his size just kind of gives him an automatic advantage as far as being able to hold the point of attack. There was, I watched every snap that he took and saw one play where he got put on the ground, which I think that is, if there's like a put on the ground rate, probably one of the best in college football. For
I'd imagine it's hard to put a 380-pound guy on the ground, no matter what you do. So yeah.
It felt like a lot of times he was kind of just using his size to like clog up space, as opposed to really taking the fight to blocks and, establishing early control and like dominating with his hands the way that he's capable of. But when he does, fire his hands into the blocker's frame and establish control, like he is a dominant block shedder. And I think that the thing that sticks out in both phases with T'Vondre Sweat as his best attribute is how skilled he is with his hands for a player of his size. When he is fully engaged as a run defender, he can just deconstruct blocks. And then as a pass rusher, he has a lot of different ways of attacking the edge and defeating the blocker's hands. My concerns with him as a player, I think as a run defender, he just has a very limited radius of impact. The way to take T'Vondre Sweat out of the game is basically just run a couple gaps away from him, because, so much gets made about like, okay, he ran about 40 time, but like, oh, his weight adjusted 40 time was really good. Offenses don't take that into account when you get into a foot race. Like,
we're just slower for you. Like, well, you're faster.
You're fast for your size. So like, I'll slow down and give you a chance. Like you literally just have to have speed
Sure.
It's like, so there are some plays that he just can't make, like on the backside of outside zone, and even in short areas, like having that closing burst to finish tackles. And I think it's the same thing with him as a pass rusher. It's really interesting. If you look at a lot of his pass rushing metrics, like he's really high in PFF pass rushing grade and pass rush win rate, but not as high as in pressures and sacks. And the way that happens, just translating it to what happens on the tape, is that he gets a lot of quick wins because he's really good with his hands. So ball is snapped, he can, club swim the guard or whatever. But then when he's got a 5 to 6 yard runway to the quarterback, he doesn't have that burst to convert those wins into pressures and sacks as consistently as you would want. So that's where I kind of see the limitations as far as being someone that you want to have on the field on third downs. Ideally, is like when it's 3rd and 5 and they're taking a 3-step drop. I don't really know that T'Vondre Sweat has just the athletic traits to go from point A to point B and like get to the quarterback but before he gets rid of the ball. And then, I think the last thing with him as a player is that that lack of burst really shows up when he tries to use power. He's got a couple dominant reps. Like he had a really nice rep against was it Bo Limmer in the at the Senior Bowl. Yeah. And then there's one against Oklahoma where he uses kind of like a hesitation long arm. But for the most part, there are not very many power rushing wins on tape. And like you don't see him consistently push the pocket or really win at all with his bull rush. And that's pretty concerning for me. I just don't think he has the first step to generate that initial knockback. So that's kind of him as a player. But then I really worry about the weight. I worry about being 393 pounds, after the national championship game,
is that an official number we got? Where do we get 393? I've heard 380s. Do we have an actual number on that? Or is that
so Dane Brugler had said that at the end of the season, the quote was pushing 390s. And then Bob McGinnis's article said 393.
That's okay. I'm not saying I disbelieve
it. Said he weighed 393 upon checking in at ESO's Sports Performance Training Center in Dallas after Texas lost in the semifinals.
Wow.
And then like not weighing in at the Senior Bowl, I think that if you just kind of apply the most rosy, optimistic, like
best case scenario, sure,
where you say, yeah, T'Vondre Sweat, now that he's in the NFL and is like now that he's accomplished his goal and is like in the NFL, now he's going to start working really hard to keep his weight down. If that happens, like, then that's great. And then it's just kind of a minor quibble with like positional value and taking a nose tackle in the top 50, but still a good player. Man, I watched the Eagles defense every week. I watched Jordan Davis loaf around the field for 30 snaps a game.
That's what I was about to ask you
after being a lot more optimistic about him coming out of college. So it's like, I've been burned by this sort of thing before. And
that's exactly what I was going to ask you, if that had any element of it, because Jordan Davis is one that you hear a lot brought up. And
like Jordan Davis can't play. He gets playing time because he's a first round pick and like he has talent, but just as far as like stamina, he needs to not be on the field. And it's
like, funny though, how that was a pick that they made, and it's like Howie Roseman did it again. But essentially, I mean, I guess the off-field stuff is the qualifier here, but it is
Howie Roseman's board is sorted by like Google Trends search data.
It is the mock draftable consensus draft board. Yeah. Okay, so no, you finish up, and then I've got a question for you.
Yeah, it's like, man, I try not to take I try not to make too many character, judgments. It's just when Dane Brugler, who's usually very conservative about like saying anything concrete, is just firmly like, yeah, this is not a player that you want to draft. Like the stuff that's come out about Byron Murphy just kind of like hating being his teammate. It's all just really concerning to me. So yeah, I hope I'm wrong, but
sure. And that's where I think that's the easiest place to see this going poorly, that he just mentally, personality, like it doesn't work, and he can't put in the work necessary. But again, we have to take the Titans we're going to be able to crush them if they are wrong. But for now, we have to take their word that they are confident that they can get the best out of him. I do love that you made that entire argument, an informed and intelligent one, without once mentioning the very silly snap count argument, which doesn't really.
Yeah, I mean, snap counts for DTs is just in college is like rarely. I mean, if somebody plays a bunch of snaps, then that's obviously a good thing. But
right,
their defenses like Texas, Michigan, they've got platoons, like they're just rotating guys in and out. So yeah.
And so I'm glad that we've had this opportunity to hear the intelligent opposite side of the argument. Let me ask you a couple of things about if you're looking at it from a rosier perspective. And I think I saw a couple of people mention this. Kenneth right here in the comments saying, does James think Sweat's ability to create gaps in the line will make Denard Wilson's blitz packages easier to deploy? A big part of my optimism with him being on the team, it has to do with the existence of Jeffrey Simmons and the existence of the other players on the defensive line. Like, I guess it is kind of cheating to grade a pick based on the projected force multiplication that they'll be. But I see him as a tier Tart replacement who is bigger and stronger, has better hand usage, and is a more of a plus as a rusher. Like that's what I think that he is going to be. And if that's what he is, I do think that's a really ideal match with a guy like Jeffrey Simmons. Do you disagree?
I think that probably when it comes to how it affects the rest of Tennessee's defense, the first place that my mind went to is that these linebackers are going to have to, assuming the rosier outcome with T'Vondre Sweat, these linebackers are going to have to think a lot less, and we're going to get probably, potentially some better linebacker play. Like if you can get really dominant, gap control from your nose tackle and just occupy blocks. That's, every double team that T'Vondre Sweat gets, that's one less blocker that's climbing to the second level, to try to, block Kenneth Murray or Cedric Gray. And so just let them play fast, get into the backfield. You saw last year, I think, when the Titans defensive front was healthy, the linebackers played pretty well. But when they had Jeffrey Simmons and one of the backups in, and you were getting a lot of free blockers to the second level, you really saw the limitations of Azeez Al-Shaair and Jack Gibbons. So that's the first place that my mind goes, is how it affects the linebacker play.
And that's, I couldn't agree more. I think that we talked on previous shows and on the streams about how it changes the math for the spine of the defense, those linebackers and those safeties, and the way that they're seemingly maxing out the extremes defensively, like wanting to be able to cover 3 deep to a man on the outside with their corners, wanting to be able to, defend the run with lighter boxes, for some math issue with double teams up front with Simmons and Sweat. I think that's whether it works or not, it seems pretty clear to me that's where their mind is at when they're trying to figure out how this defense is going to function.
Yeah, it's, again, I think you can get quality nose tackle play in the 6th round, but if he ends up being a really good nose tackle starter, I think that it's like no one's going to be really debating about the pick value in a few years. So
who's a quality comp in the league right now where you say, if he turns into that, then I think people are going to be happy? You hear Vita Vea thrown around a lot just because he's huge and also a nose tackle.
Yeah, Vita Vea is kind of like one of a kind to me.
Right.
My comp for him was Eddie Goldman, who's not in the league anymore.
I'd be lying if I said I knew who that was.
Yeah, he played for the Bears for a while. Guys like Tim Settle, maybe, or it's hard to really do comps with T'Vondre Sweat because you have to. There's no one that's his size,
Right.
So it's like,
Fair enough.
a bigger version of so-and-so.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of these other guys they drafted. I was really fond of the way they started day 3, and I'm curious if you shared the same sentiment. Cedric Gray and Jarvis Brownlee were 2 guys we wrote about in our draft guide, and before day 3 started, I tweeted out 4 screenshots from that and said they should get one of these guys, and they ended up getting.
You're on a heater.
I know we were on a heater. It's it's just downhill from here, but take them in any order you'd like. I know we spent a decent amount of time sitting on that couch in a hotel room at the Senior Bowl a couple months ago talking about Jarvis Brownlee and how impressive he had been in those practices. What did you make of these 2 additions?
Yeah, I think that Cedric Gray and Jarvis Brownlee were 2 really good picks that made a lot of sense. Cedric Gray I had as my 4th ranked linebacker. I think that he's just a well-rounded, do-it-all, like green dot type of player. He's got speed, he's got length, he reads the game pretty quickly, and is just an extremely versatile cover linebacker. He can play man coverage on tight ends or running backs. He's one of the best linebackers in this class at recovering from play action. He's got like multiple interceptions on tape where he bites on play action initially, and then he's really quick to do the robot technique where you like turn your back to the quarterback, locate your assignment, connect to it, and ended up getting interceptions on those plays. So yeah, just a really smart linebacker in zone or man coverage. And his biggest issue is that he's not that strong to really absorb contact, and he ends up on the ground a lot more often than you'd like to see. I think I only watched a couple games of his 2022 tape, but I remember seeing from like PFF grades that he graded out a lot better last year. So maybe this year was like a step down. Can't confirm that for sure, but I mean, I thought this year's tape was pretty solid. So really like that pick.
Before you get to Brownlee, can I just say one thing? I've heard a couple people that are more acquainted with North Carolina football talk since his pick about, they're like, I can't wait to see this guy not play on that North Carolina defense because it was just not particularly good. When you were watching him on defense, did he stick out as like, okay, the rest of these cats may not be able to play, but this guy's an NFLer?
So I kind of have tunnel vision on the players that I'm watching.
Okay, fair enough.
And I was watching, when I did UNC's defense, I watched Cedric Gray and then their defensive lineman, Miles Murphy, who is a UDFA. But I can tell you based on the fact that there was no one else that was like even on the radar on their defense that they probably weren't that good.
Fair enough. Okay.
But I can't give any like details about the other players.
Fair.
I mean, from the production for his 3 seasons at UNC, 11 forced turnovers in those 3 seasons, it's a pretty good gamble to say that he was, if not
doing a lot of it,
the most driving factor of that UNC defense. And I think that's something that Denard Wilson really, really likes in his guys coming from that Ravens, kind of structure where they've been known to really try to force turnovers over the last couple of years, coming from that kind of mold of aggressiveness, which I think leads right into Jarvis Brownlee Jr., who I can't think of 2 corners better to learn from for Jarvis Brownlee Jr. than L'Jarius Sneed and Cheeto in that locker room.
Yeah, he's kind of like a mini L'Jarius Sneed in a lot of ways. I think the most physical and aggressive corner in this class. Like it gets overused to say that somebody, punches above their weight class or, plays bigger than their size or whatever. But like he does, dude. He just whether it's
We've been having
block out on the perimeter, a screen pass, or just like pressing someone at the line of scrimmage, he's trying to end your career on that play. It's just like
nobody gets off the line on this team. Nobody.
Nope. I think that, the reason he fell to the 5th round is that the coverage down the field isn't as consistent. Right. He's not the fastest corner. Kind of makes that worse by biting on a lot of double moves and stuff. And then he's not really the most like fluid, just man coverage, sticking tightly to the break type of player. So, he's an interesting player that I think can can give you some value as the 4th or 5th corner. He's got to develop his man coverage down the field and obviously get a little bit less physical, learn when to disengage past the 5-yard window. But, you know, could be really good special teams player as he develops. Also think he might have some potential at safety if corner doesn't work out.
Well, that's certainly something the Titans could use. JT, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say like the perfect comp for him. We started this on our last show. Is like he's the small dog that like is still bossing around like the German shepherds and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I said he was a Chihuahua and got absolutely shot down for that one. I have no idea.
Too small.
It
needs to be a manlier dog than that.
James, that like I can think of like a Jack Russell Terrier as like the best dog for him, but like I can't think of anything else that is just like. I did my research. I think I'm landing on Jack Russell Terrier.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like one of those like scraggly little like
rat dog.
Yeah, like rat
Mexican
dog.
street dog.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He's like a rat dog that barks. You take him to the park, and he's like all the other dog owners are like, "What is this dog doing?" He's trying.
I don't know what kind of dog that is, but it
German
definitely
Shepherd.
has rabies. I'm not getting anywhere near that thing. Yeah.
He's like he's the dog where like the owner's like, oh, you can pet him. He's nice, and the dog's like,
bite your hand.
It's like it don't bite. Yes, it do.
Nice.
This dog bite.
It got teeth, don't it?
Definitely bites. That's Jarvis Brownlee in a nutshell right there.
Kenneth asked a good question that transitions into what I wanted to ask you about with him. And he says the first 3 picks the Titans made felt like needs. Jarvis Brownlee felt like the first more of a luxury pick. Is that what you would have done? And so my question was going to be like, you know, going from the top 3 guys, the starting corners they have on this team to Trey Avery was like where they were sitting before they brought in Jarvis Brownlee Jr. Was corner like on your radar as a thing that they should have done when they did it in the draft? And do you think he bridges that gap where when one of those guys inevitably goes down, hey, we've got somebody that we can, you know, rely on with some kind of faith to roll out there?
I think he's definitely an upgrade, you know, to Trey Avery at cornerback 4, especially in goal line situations. Like a goal line fade against Trey Avery was just automatic, you know, and I think that Jarvis Brownlee, that's probably one of the areas that he'll have the most success in. I feel like, honestly, once you get to the 5th round, special teams just becomes a huge part of it. You know, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is a player with like almost 500 career special teams snaps across Louisville and Florida State. So he'll be an immediate contributor there. And I think that, you know, I think that probably had as much to do with it as like him actually playing corner, if I had to guess.
Fair enough. To finish up on Jarvis Brownlee Jr., Stoney in the comments saying he's like Scrappy Doo, but on HGH and can actually throw hands. I think that's a pretty strong one right there from Stoney. We might have to roll with that. Anything else the Titans did in this draft? The last 3 guys they took, a receiver, an edge, a safety that's going to convert to linebacker. Did any of those guys jump off the page as potential impact player? Like, what did you think about them coming in and their fit with the Titans? Anything of note?
Yeah, I thought that James Williams was definitely one of my definitely my favorite pick of those 3. One of my favorite Jameses in this class.
I have to stick with the Eastons, of which there was one in this class, and he was a UDFA somewhere. Yeah, I don't know anything about him, but now there are 2 Eastons in the league, and I think they both suck. Which it's
linebacker out of Wyoming. Yeah, I didn't grade him.
Because I'm sure that you just oversaw. You didn't. Yeah, you missed the talent on that because it's there. I promise.
Okay. So yeah, I think James Williams, the Miami safety that's going to convert to linebacker, has a lot of like J-Run Curse type of skill set, like just with his length, his physicality. I think that definitely too stiff, not fast enough to play deep safety. But then when you talk about moving him to linebacker, then you've just got kind of a mismatch type of player, like a tight end eraser, dare I say.
Never heard that before in Titans context.
You know, play off of blocks. He can, be really disruptive at the catch point. He can play some press coverage on tight ends. He can blitz. I think James Williams has a chance to contribute in some ways. Jha'Quan Jackson, I just never really saw it with him. He's
definitely
like
my least favorite pick there.
Yeah, he's a deep threat, but it's like most of his production was schemed up. It wasn't like him winning deep one-on-one. It's like he leaks out of the formation on some kind of trick play, or like it's a coverage bust that he obviously has the speed to punish the defense for. But
the vision there has to be returner, right? That it's got to be them trying to figure out the new rule. I don't see how else they make that decision there.
Yeah,
with, like,
and
Malik on the board, which was
the weird thing also is that now I'm not the special teams expert, that, but I always felt like with the new kick return rules, it was going to skew towards the Malachi Corley
right
types of like the bigger, more running back build type of players,
guys. Yep.
Instead of just taking the fast, the track receiver. So yeah, I don't know about that, and also just the fact that he's dropped a bunch of kicks and punt returns is kind of concerning. But I don't see very much. I mean, I thought
Justin
Colton
Fields
Dow's,
is your
I thought
returner.
Colton
You see that
Dow's
today?
pick was better than Jha'Quan Jackson, for example.
You see the Steelers thing about playing Justin Fields as their returner? That's the solution. You need
Really?
a Justin Fields type out there.
I didn't see that.
Malik Willis.
I'm sure that idea got shot down. Yeah, Malik Willis, returner. For you've heard it here first on the Hot Read podcast. Okay, so that's the Titans draft. Oh no, go ahead, finish. I forgot.
And then I'll just give just quick bullet points. So like Jaylen Harrell is he's explosive. He does like a spin move. Edge rusher out of Michigan. He'll use like a spin move, which is pretty nice. Gets moved back in the run game, and I think needs to add some weight. But for a 7th round pick, he's fine. Probably not going to contribute much. The one UDFA that I did really like, though, was Dylan Johnson, the running back out of Washington. You
think Chestnut's on notice?
What's that?
Is Julius Chestnut on notice?
Oh, yeah.
Is Hassan Haskins on notice? I think it's the bigger question.
I don't think Hassan Haskins in the chair to be on notice. I think he might be doing the notice thing.
Dylan Johnson is like not a great athlete, but just a really solid running back across the board. He's a good pass blocker. He's had 77 targets in the past 2 seasons and just 1 drop. Nice jump cut, stiff arm. He's really light on his feet to like avoid traffic in the backfield. I think he's a really solid running back. That's just he's not an elite athlete, like game-breaking big play.
Why is he a UDFA? What's the downside?
But really solid player. And he's at this point, he would be my hot take to make the roster as RB3.
Okay, and this is such a stony question, but I'll throw it out there anyways. Do you have who even is this? Isaiah Oten? Is that
Isaiah Eiton? Is that a UDFA? I didn't have him on my.
I don't know either. I don't know, man. Sorry, Stony, you're not getting it here. Okay, before we let you go, I want to just get some highlights and lowlights from the rest of the AFC South. Based on my, the way that I viewed these players coming in, and it's a tough look when you cover one team and you're like, the rest of the teams in the division suck. But like, I genuinely just didn't love any of these other drafts. Like we can start with the Texans here and made 4 picks in the first 4 rounds. Fine players. Kamari Lassiter in the second. I'm not crazy about that value. I liked him a lot before the testing. The speed, the outside ability, I don't know about that. Blake Fisher, fine in the second round at 59, but I liked some of the other tackle prospects on the board more than him. Kalen Bullock, also fine. I guess it's less of a bad draft for the Texans than just a boring one for me. Cade Stover, I know you're reuniting him with the quarterback
Stroud.
there, but with Stroud, but I don't know if I loved him as a prospect as a 4th rounder. What do you think of their draft as a whole?
Yeah, I think I gave I'm a very tough grader, just so you know, but I gave the Colts a B, I gave the Texans and Titans a C, and then I gave the Jags a C-.
Okay.
So yeah, I think the Texans were just kind of like appropriate value for the first 2 picks. Like I had Lassiter at 42, I had Blake Fisher at 63, so I'm good with both of those picks. I thought Kalen Bullock was just like a reach based off of traits and playmaking potential.
Okay.
You know, he's such a bad tackler and so many coverage busts, but he has truly like some of the best movement skills and playmaking ability in this class. Cade Stover is like a lunch pail type of possession tight end. Just don't see a whole lot of upside to separate in the NFL. Didn't watch Jamal Hill out of Oregon.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I mean, their 6th and 7th round picks were guys that I had in the 200s. So pretty standard draft. Not really offended by it, but I don't know that they, remade their team or anything.
So it sounds like you like the Colts draft the most. They had 5 picks in the top 150. I really like 3 of them, and then 2 of them I just are head scratchers for me. Their first 2 guys, Latu and Adonai Mitchell, feel like really fantastic values if they both pan out. It's like very, very boom bust with both of those guys. Could turn out that it's an incredible draft because they both hit. Could turn out that they wasted those picks because for medical or off-field reasons, they just don't pan out. And I really liked Tanner Bortolini, a guy that rose up draft boards a lot in the draft process, the center out of Wisconsin in the 4th. Man, Matt Goncalves from Pittsburgh, the tackle that took in the 3rd, and then Anthony Gould, the receiver that I'd imagine they're also planning on using as a returner primarily at Oregon State in the 5th. That's where I wasn't quite sure what they were doing with those picks, but what'd you love or like about this draft?
So yeah, I'm with you on the first 2 picks. Matt Gonzalez, I didn't watch him, so that didn't factor into my grade at all.
Okay.
I've heard like mixed reviews on him at 79. I saw like a highlight video on Twitter, but kind of a versatile tackle guard type of player. I loved the Anthony Gould pick. He was one of my guys.
Okay, so sell me on him because I really didn't know a whole lot about him beforehand.
Yeah, so like one of my favorite of the small, undersized like route running types on day 3. He's fast. He's explosive. He's one of the best receivers in this class, pound for pound at beating press coverage.
Wow.
Now you worry at 5'8", 172 pounds. If that's, going to be as effective against Pat Surtain, Sauce Gardner, but he played on the outside at Oregon State and, could have some inside outside versatility. I think that, really good ball tracking skills over the shoulder, not going to be a jump ball winner in contested catch situations, but, not a lot of drops, reliable catching open targets, and then gives you the kick and punt return value there. So I had a late 4th round grade on him. Think that was pretty good value for Anthony Gould. And then like Jalen Carlies, Jalen Simpson are just 2 really interesting safety prospects that might not end up playing safety. I think Carlies is probably going to be a linebacker. Jalen Simpson played corner before converting to safety. Really good ball skills, but might be too small to hang at safety. And then didn't watch their last 2 picks, Micah Abraham and Jonah Leolu.
Sure.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say about the Colts is like, they take the drafting for value to the extreme. See, like clearly not drafting for need because, man, they came into this needing a cornerback bad, and they didn't really get one. So I don't quite know what their plan is there. But I do generally like the draft that they had.
And then the Jags.
Yeah, the Jags. Let's do the Jags. I was leaving room there in case anybody had
any my bad.
Input. No, you're good. Clearly,
I was fine with all of it. I love Latu. Like I think if he can just stay healthy. Once again, I would love to turn injuries off because then it wouldn't matter, and I think he would be the best defensive prospect in this class with a bullet. But like you were saying, the Jags, I don't know what was worse, Trent Balke letting out a fart during the press conference or this draft class, man. Like
he just farted in this draft because like I liked what he did with Brian Thomas Jr. Not a pick that people were shocked by, but moving back and still getting him strong in the 1st. Apparently they just attended the LSU Pro Day and then just kind of wrapped up their draft season because then they drafted 2 defensive linemen from LSU. By my estimation, the 2 that were worse than the one they didn't draft. Like there were 3 of them in this class. I liked the one they didn't draft more than the other 2 personally. Jerry and Jones, Florida State cornerback, Javon Foster, Missouri tackle. I kind of hated their draft after their first round pick, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Mason Smith is just a dart throw lottery ticket. Like he's had some flashes early in his career, but it has really struggled to put it together with all the injuries. Not a good run defender at this point. Doesn't have anything outside of the club swim as a pass rusher. So yeah, I see the upside with him, but he needs a lot of development. Jerry and Jones, I thought was I had almost 100 spots lower than where they took him. I thought he was like a mid day 3 type of player, really fast and explosive, but not very sticky in man coverage and just doesn't have that anticipation for when receivers are going to break their routes. He just struggles to keep up with guys on the horizontal plane. Javon Foster is like a solid 4th round tackle. No problem with that. Jordan Jefferson, project nose tackle, has no idea what he's doing with his hands or his feet. And he has the traits, but he just gets moved back in the run game so often. Kind of like DeAndre Prince, really fast, doesn't have long arms, but he's really quick with his hands and does a good job in press coverage and being disruptive at the catch point. I think that, I think DeAndre Prince is an appropriately drafted player. I would say Keelan Robinson, Cam Little, didn't watch either of them, and then Miles Cole. Trent Balke would have taken him first overall if the scouts would have let him.
He saw those arms in Mobile and said, "It's a wrap. We're taking this guy."
Yep.
Man, he drafts like he's Brad Holmes. Like that's the thing with Trent Balke. He drafts like he's just every pick is the ultimate heat check. But the difference is like you're not on a heater, buddy. Like you need to make some safer picks here. You don't get to go off the board like this when your team is the way that it is. I think Balke is one of the worst GMs in the league, and I don't understand his draft most years.
I would definitely agree with that. Yep.
Okay. Well, that's anything else to add? Any more thoughts before we get out of here, fellas? Or are we ready to wrap it up for today?
I got nothing.
JT, last call.
I mean, I was just gonna say, why did do you think that Gabriel Murphy from UCLA not going drafted was because teams were just too scared that they would write his twin brother on there, and that's why that he did not go drafted?
It's a two for one special on those guys. I like Gabe Murphy. I thought he should have been drafted. James,
I'm really surprised that Gabe Murphy wasn't drafted.
So I'm validated in this. Okay, cool.
He was my highest graded player that went undrafted. The only one that had a 4th round grade or higher. Wow. I mean, I get the arm length is concerning, but that's really surprising to me that he wasn't at least worth a 7th round pick.
Did you like Ivan Pace last year too, or no?
I actually didn't watch Ivan Pace last year. So
okay, just because last year he was the guy for me. Once everything wrapped up, I'm like, how did this guy go undrafted? And he was UDFA for the Vikings and played most of the year well. And then the Vikings got Gabe Murphy too. So Vikings are my winners in the UDFA poll every year because I think they're smart. But we'll end with that, with a little Vikings UDFA take. And that's the Hot Read podcast for today. Guys, we'll be back next week talking about rookie minicamp coming up soon, and then mandatory minicamp for everybody. And the NFL calendar rolls on. James, thanks for taking the time for us today, my friend. Always good talking about these prospects with you, and you offered some great insight, so I appreciate the perspective.
Thanks for having me.
Anything I know you're off right now, but what should the people go and look at? I'm sure you had some post-draft coverage put up on YouTube anyways. They need to go back and check out if they've not seen.
Yep, I did grades for every team's draft on AtoZ Sports Film Room YouTube channel, so go check those out.
Did you stay up all night post-draft like you have in the past to just crank those out like the monster that you are?
No, I actually didn't. I spread it out between.
You're losing it, dude. You're losing your edge. All right, we'll have to get on for that. Get on to you for that next year. But until then, this has been the Hot Read podcast for our guest James and producer JT. I'm your host Easton Freeze. Make sure you're subscribed, liked, all those things. We'll talk to you next week.